Hi, my name's Odellin. I paid their mortgage. I paid for their kids' school lunches. I even paid for the roof over their heads. But when I heard my sister-in-law say, casually without shame, that my mother wasn't welcome for New Year's because she made people uncomfortable, I smiled. And I stopped paying. What came next? Well, let's just say silence is louder when it's legal. Before we dive in, tell me, what time is it where you are right now? And if it were your mother, would you have done the same? I had no intention of staying long, just long enough to drop off the New Year's basket. A few oranges, a bottle of wine, and some homemade cookies wrapped in gold ribbon. Nothing extravagant. Just something small to say, I still care, even if the invitation never came. The Houston winter air wasn't icy, but it had that dry, cutting chill that finds its way under your sleeves. I parked half a block down from Evan's house, like I always did, out of habit or maybe self-preservation. I didn't want to feel like I was imposing. Not again. As I walked toward the porch, I noticed the little things, Leora's taste stamped on every corner. Her wreath was picture-perfect, sprayed white like snow, even though we never got snow. It looked like something off a holiday catalog. Elegant, sterile. Nothing about it said family. I adjusted the ribbon on the basket one last time, took a breath, and stepped onto the porch. And that's when I heard her. I swear, if Miriam even tries to show up, I'm locking the door. I don't care if she's Evan's mother. She ruins the vibe. Leora's voice was sharp, flat, and loud enough that I knew she wanted to be heard. Then came Evan's voice, lower, wearier. Let's not get into that now. Just keep it simple. No drama this year, please. He didn't defend Mom. He didn't even hesitate, just brushed it away like it wasn't worth the effort. I stood frozen, my hand still gripping the basket handle. For a moment, I wasn't 36. I was 6 years old again, listening through the walls as my parents argued over who forgot to pick me up from school. That helpless, invisible feeling, it never quite leaves you. I should have walked away right then. Instead, I stood there, letting their words settle into my bones. My mom, Miriam, wasn't some overbearing matriarch. She was quiet, the kind of woman who worked 2 jobs, skipped buying herself a winter coat so we could have new shoes for school, and never once asked to be celebrated. Last year, she made a pot of gumbo big enough to feed a dozen, hoping Evan would bring the kids. She waited by the phone, glancing at the clock every 15 minutes, pretending she didn't mind eating alone. She ruins the vibe? That woman built the vibe. Everything good we ever had started with her. I set the basket down carefully on the mat and backed away like I'd stepped into someone else's story. No knock, no doorbell, no goodbye. Back in the car, the silence was suffocating. I stared at the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest, not from rage, but something colder, deeper. I remembered Mom's voice just a few weeks ago. I don't want to be a burden this year, honey. Maybe I'll just make myself a little dinner. A little dinner. For a woman who used to serve leftovers to herself after feeding all of us first. The car felt smaller the longer I sat there. I turned the key and drove home, my fingers gripping the wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to the earth. The sun was starting to dip by the time I pulled into my driveway. The golden hour, the kind of light that makes even sad things look gentle. I didn't turn on the kitchen light. I let the dimness wrap around me like a blanket as I set my purse on the counter. I plugged in my phone, opened the cabinet, poured myself half a glass of Pinot Noir, and walked to my desk. The laptop screen blinked awake, lighting up the corner of the room. Bank of East Houston Family Mortgage Support. I clicked into my account. Evan's mortgage. 5 years of automatic payments. Quiet, consistent, unquestioned. I'd helped them get the house. I never told Mom. I didn't want her to feel guilty. I hovered over his name. All those years I paid without a word. Not for thanks, not for recognition, because that's what you do for family, when you believe they'd do the same for you. But they wouldn't. Not for me. Not for her. I clicked delete. A prompt appeared. Are you sure you want to remove this account? This action cannot be undone. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The screen refreshed. His name was gone, just like that. No drama, no warning, just one quiet final act of loyalty, redirected, and in that one cold click, I became the villain they created. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in lazy circles, each rotation as pointless as the promises I'd once believed from Evan. Around 6 a.m., I slipped out of bed and walked barefoot into the kitchen, careful not to wake Mom. The air smelled like fabric softener and old lemon cleaner, quiet reminders of a woman who tried to hold her world together with simple routines. By the time the sun had crept up fully, Mom was already humming, stirring a pot of black-eyed peas like it was just another normal New Year's morning. She wore her faded peach house dress, the one with the tiny frayed pocket and a bleach stain near the hem. Her silver hair was pinned up like always, not a strand out of place. "Odellin, baby," she smiled. "Come taste this. I used smoked turkey this time instead of ham." I forced a smile and leaned against the counter. "Looks great, Mama." She wiped her hands, then said it, so casually like it didn't slice through me. "Evan's done so well for himself, huh? That house, the pool, the way he's hosting now, makes a mother proud." I blinked hard, swallowed, and nodded. "He always had drive," she went on, stirring again. "Even when he was little, remember? Always trying to be the man of the house after your daddy passed. You know, buying that home all by himself. That's no small thing." I didn't say anything, just stood there with my spine burning. He didn't buy that house all by himself. 2 years ago, I was the one who wrote the check for the down payment. $35,000 from my inheritance, money Dad left me. I was the one who spent 3 weekends helping him fix his credit score, then sat across from the loan officer, signing page after page, as a co-signer, because Evan couldn't do it alone, but he asked me to keep it quiet. Said, "It'll just confuse Mom if she thinks you're involved. Let's keep it clean, simple." And I agreed, like a fool. I told myself it was just paperwork, that it didn't matter who got credit. That family meant helping when you could. But it did matter. Especially now, seeing Mom swell with pride over something built on my silence. "You okay, baby?" she asked, turning to look at me. "You've gone all quiet." "Just thinking," I said softly, clearing my throat. "Did Evan ever tell you how he afforded the house?" She laughed. "Oh, you know your brother. Always said he was saving up in secret. Didn't want to say anything until it was done." I felt my jaw clench. Right. Saving up in secret. I walked to the hallway closet, pulled out a worn accordion file I'd kept since the closing day. It was stuffed with contracts, emails, bank statements, receipts that proved who had really made that house possible. Back in my room, I set it on the desk, flipped through pages until I found the one I remembered clearly. The final loan agreement. His name and mine. In bold, equal obligation, equal responsibility. But only one of us got the credit. Only one was the success story. And worse, Evan used that house, that illusion, to turn Mom into an outsider. He let his wife whisper, "She brings the mood down," and didn't say a damn thing. I sat there, looking at my signature next to his, feeling something cold and sharp rise in my chest. Resentment, yes, but also clarity. This wasn't just about Mom being excluded from dinner. This was about a pattern. I built that house with him, and now they barred the woman who raised us both from walking through it. He didn't just erase me, he used me. Well, now I had a paper trail, and if Evan thought I'd stay quiet forever, he was about to learn something new about his little sister. The morning after New Year's felt grayer than usual. The sky outside was blank, the kind of dull that seeps into your chest and settles there. I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee that had gone lukewarm before I even took a sip. My mother sat on the sofa, quietly knitting a scarf she'd started weeks ago. Her fingers moved steadily, but her eyes stayed far away. She hadn't said a word about last night. Neither had Evan. Not a single message, not a call, nothing. I checked my phone again, out of habit more than hope. The screen stared back blankly. Then a buzz. Evan. My heart jumped. I tapped answer, but it ended just as quickly. A missed call, no voicemail. I opened my voicemail anyway, expecting an empty inbox, until I saw one new message from the previous night, time-stamped around the time they were probably still setting the table. I tapped it. At first, all I heard was static and rustling, until a familiar voice broke through. Evan. She's emotionally unstable. I mean, who drags mom to everything like it's still 2005? We needed this clean. My stomach turned. A woman's voice chimed in. Leora, probably. It's our new year. You don't want guilt on the couch. They both laughed. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, my phone still in my hand. The coffee had cooled completely. My hands didn't feel like mine. Emotionally unstable? That's what I was to him? Just a liability with too many memories? Behind me, I heard my mother humming faintly, some tune from a long time ago, maybe one she used to sing while cooking black-eyed peas every January 1st. Every New Year, we'd sit in that old kitchen, the three of us, playing charades, messing up cornbread recipes, falling asleep on the couch together under the same fleece blanket. And now? Now, I was the burden. The embarrassment. The one who drags mom around like it's 2005. I walked back to my room slowly, as if my feet weren't sure if they should carry me or just give up and fold. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The browser was still on the mortgage portal from the night before. There it was, my name, my signature. I clicked through the deed again, slowly, reading every word like it was written in fire. It wasn't just a house, it was proof that I mattered when it counted. Evan's voice echoed in my head. We needed this clean. Clean. He wanted a clean slate, a guilt-free, sanitized version of our family, one where the mother who raised us alone didn't exist, and the sister who co-signed his future didn't matter. I looked up, my reflection faint in the dark screen. They want clean? I whispered to no one. Let's give them clean. I closed the laptop, but not before saving the voicemail in a folder titled January. Not revenge, not yet. But the seed had cracked open. The phone call ended, and for a long while I just sat there, staring at the quiet hum of my screen. I wasn't trembling, not anymore. What replaced the ache in my chest was colder. It was purpose. I didn't even change clothes that morning. I made coffee, ignored my inbox, and walked into the small office I'd set up off the kitchen. My files were still in the same accordion folder from tax season, tucked under a box labeled Mom Medical. I pulled it out, sat at my desk, and clicked on the mortgage folder like I'd done 100 times before. But this time, I looked deeper. There, buried beneath the familiar auto payment setup, was something I didn't recognize. A new document I hadn't opened, labeled 2023 Refi Agreement. Odd, Evan hadn't mentioned refinancing. Not once, and I would have known. I should have known, because you don't refinance a home when someone else's name is already on the loan, unless they sign off. I opened the PDF and stopped breathing. My name was right there, co-signer, again, but I hadn't signed. I scrolled to the end, and there it was, a signature that looked like mine, almost convincingly so. But I've been signing the same way since I was 15. There was a hesitation on the Y, a loop I never make. They'd forged it. I reached across my desk, grabbed a sticky note, and just wrote, fraud. Then I stuck it to the screen. A sharp knock pulled me from my spiral. I peeked through the side window and saw Mr. Holtz from next door holding a letter in his hand. I opened the door before he could knock again. Afternoon, Miss Blanchett. This was dropped in my box by mistake, he said, handing over a pale blue envelope. Thanks, Mr. Holtz, I said, offering a weary smile. He lingered for a second. Hope you're not packing up just yet. I blinked. Packing? He looked surprised. Well, your brother said you'd be moving out sometime before New Year's. Been telling the HOA folks for a while. That's why they stopped sending you mail directly. Figured the address was getting updated. I swallowed hard. He adjusted his coat. Sorry. Didn't mean to poke my nose in. Just figured you'd want to know what's being said. I do, I said, quieter than I meant to. When he left, I returned to my desk and sat down slowly, my legs suddenly heavier than they'd been just minutes before. I looked at the envelope again. The return address was for the HOA. Inside, a notice about upcoming assessments, addressed to Evan and Leora. Not to me, not even or current resident. They were phasing me out, quietly, systematically. And the worst part? I hadn't even seen it happening. My mind darted back to a family dinner last November. Evan had asked me to help him sign the holiday card list, a big pile of glossy envelopes. I'd laughed and scribbled a few without looking. "Come on, Odie, just a few signatures. It'll mean a lot," he'd said, nudging the papers toward me. My chest tightened. It hadn't been cards, it had been this. I opened my drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and slid the refinance PDF inside. I wrote across the top in block letters, January 2nd, fraud documents. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Not out of fear, anyway. There's a strange power in naming what's been done to you. When the gaslight goes out and the truth flickers to life. Outside, the day had darkened. Rain clouds gathered, casting shadows across the floor of my kitchen. I made 2 mugs of tea, one for myself, one for Mom, and walked into the living room. She was knitting something pink, her eyes soft but distant. I set the mug beside her hand. "You don't owe them anything anymore," I said softly. She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" I smiled, gently this time. "Just drink your tea, Mama. Everything's fine." Back in my office, I sat down with my phone. For the first time, I didn't hesitate. "Hi, yes," I said when the call connected. "I'd like to report mortgage fraud. My name is Odellyn Blanchet." The silence that says war. I didn't sleep that night. Not deeply, at least. I watched the shadows shift across the ceiling until the gray of morning crept in. While my mother moved around the kitchen in her quiet rhythm, I sat with my coffee untouched, scrolling absently through my phone. That's when I saw it. Romy's face filled the screen, cheerful, smug, made up in a way that said she was ready to be viral. The video was stitched with a popular audio clip about drama queens, but the caption below made my stomach turn cold. Family freeloaders always act like saints. And then came my voice, clipped from a conversation we'd had weeks ago in confidence. I'd been talking about sacrifice, about how I covered the mortgage after Dad passed because I couldn't bear to see Mom lose the house. Now it was spun into a joke. Her followers laughed. They dropped emojis, crying with laughter, the little clown face, a broken heart split for dramatic effect. That wasn't just content. That was cruelty served on a silver platter for clicks. I didn't scream, I didn't throw my phone. I stood up slowly, walked to the hall, and shut my bedroom door behind me. Sitting at my desk, I opened my banking app. The numbers blinked back at me, scheduled transfers, neat and predictable. One by one, I canceled every recurring payment. The mortgage, the groceries, the utilities I'd been covering quietly for 2 years, not out of obligation, but because I thought I was helping hold the family together. Click. Canceled. Click. Gone. Click. No more. If they wanted to act like I was dead weight, I'd let them see how much they were leaning on me. Mid-morning, I texted Romy. "Coffee? 11:30? That place near Heights. Just us." She replied in minutes. "Sure. Been meaning to talk anyway." I didn't mention the video. I wanted to look her in the eye when I asked her who she really thought I was. The cafe was bright and crowded, but the noise washed out to a low hum once Romy arrived. She hugged me like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just blasted me across the internet. Her perfume was sharp, her smile rehearsed. "Girl, you good?" she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "That video was trending all night. Wild, right?" I didn't respond right away. I stirred my tea and let her fill the silence. "You know how it is," she continued, flipping her hair back. "It's just content. Everyone's doing family stuff now. Relatable, messy. It's all love, though." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, unlocked it, slid it across the table, screen facing up. On it was the scanned refinancing document. My name, my fake signature, a notary who didn't exist. She leaned in and froze. The color drained from her cheeks. "I didn't do that," she said too quickly. I didn't blink. "It doesn't matter. You're part of it now." Her hand hovered above the phone, then retreated. "This isn't content," I said quietly. "It's a felony." We sat in that silence for another moment. She didn't reach for her latte again. I stood up and left. By the time I pulled into my driveway, The wind had picked up. Dead leaves skittered across the porch. Inside, the air felt different, heavy, like a shift had taken place. I stepped into the kitchen and found my mother hunched at the sink, shoulders shaking. Her back was to me, but the sound of her trying not to sob cut through the quiet like glass. I paused, watching her try to hold herself together. For what? For them? I didn't say a word. I walked past her, not out of coldness, out of clarity. This wasn't my burden to carry anymore. The following day brought a strange, deceptive calm. Gray skies hung low, the kind that made you think the world was holding its breath. I sat at my desk with a steaming mug of coffee untouched beside me, the scent sharp but distant, like everything else had become. The morning had passed in near silence. Mom had busied herself scrubbing corners that didn't need cleaning. I let her. Neither of us spoke much since I'd cut off the mortgage support. There was nothing to explain. The silence between us wasn't cold. It was tired. By early afternoon, I was sifting through a stack of old files in my office, labeling folders for the attorney I'd quietly contacted the night before. Each form, receipt, and document became a weapon. Facts didn't flinch. Paper didn't lie. A light knock pulled me out of my focus. When I opened the front door, Mrs. Henley, our elderly neighbor from 3 doors down, smiled, clutching a red holiday envelope in her gloved hand. "Oh, Dellen, dear," she said with a soft breath. "This was in my mailbox. Must have been mixed up. It's addressed to Romy, but your name is printed under the barcode. Strange, right?" I took it, eyes narrowing. "Thank you, Mrs. Henley." She hesitated. "I hope you're doing okay. Folks around here talk a lot, but not everything they say is true." That lingered in the air even after I closed the door. Back at my desk, I opened the envelope. Inside was a printed letter from the HOA thanking Romy Blanchet, not me, for spearheading the holiday giving program and generously organizing donation drives for underserved families. Things I had done year after year, alone. The closing paragraph referenced certain unreliable family members who declined to participate this year, noting it was a relief to pass the torch. My chest stayed still, but something behind my ribs cracked. They'd taken even my reputation now, swapped me out of my own story. I didn't cry. I shredded the letter. Then I went back to the files, tugging out older records to prepare a timeline of every financial action tied to the house. That's when I saw it. A credit alert from a lender I didn't recognize, postmarked 4 months ago. My breath stalled. I clicked through the bank's web portal using credentials I still had from the cosign. And there it was, a second mortgage, opened in my name, using my social, with a signature that almost looked like mine. Except I hadn't touched a pen. It hit like a slow, steady landslide. My own parents had done this. They hadn't even asked. The shock was quiet. The realization came on like steam under skin, burning, invisible, unstoppable. I replayed a voicemail from last fall. Dad's voice, hesitant. "You wouldn't understand. We just needed help. It was temporary." His version of affection had always been coded in conditions. Even now, he hadn't admitted what they'd done. I stared at the screen. Help? I gave help. They took ownership. They handed out stories with my name erased and then redrew me as the problem. The calm inside me hardened. Not anger anymore, clarity. I unlocked the drawer beside my desk and removed a folder labeled Original Mortgage 2019. Each page crisp, notarized, official. My name, my consent, my terms. Then I pulled the new document from the printer tray, the one with the forged signature. My name, copied, crooked, wrong. I placed the two side by side on the desk and began printing copies, labeling a new folder. Fraud, Second Mortgage, October 2024. Facts were now my fists, and I'd stopped pulling punches. The night air was crisp, and I could hear the rustling of winter-dry leaves beneath my shoes as I walked toward the community hall. Porch lights glowed in quiet rows, but I wasn't here for pleasantries. I pushed the doors open at exactly 7:03 p.m. Conversations died in fragments. People looked up, surprised. Some blinked as if trying to place me. Others already knew, and froze. Romy's head snapped around. She was near the podium, standing next to our mother, holding a stack of HOA reports like she'd just chaired the meeting. "You're not even on the list," she said, voice brittle. "This isn't your lane, O'Dellin." I didn't respond. I walked past the folding chairs and stopped in front of the committee table. I reached into my bag and pulled out 3 neatly clipped folders. One for the HOA president, one for the secretary, one for public view. Inside, documentation showing my name listed, falsely, as absent and unreliable in previous meeting minutes, forged acknowledgments tied to the holiday drive, and a copy of the second mortgage opened without my consent. I placed the documents down gently, then stepped back. "Before you ask," I said clearly, "every signature in those reports that looks like mine isn't." The HOA chair, Mrs. Kittrell, squinted at the paperwork, then glanced up slowly. "Is this real?" "Every page," I replied, "can be verified. Dates, IP logs, property records, and if you're wondering, yes, this is being filed with the state attorney's office." Whispers swirled like wind through dry grass. Someone in the back coughed. The woman next to my father leaned away slightly, her eyes wide. Romy tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. "Okay, wow, this is a lot of drama over a few holiday reports. Maybe you should take a breath." I stayed where I was. "You used my name, my work, and my credit, and then scrubbed me out of the picture so you could pose for the HOA newsletter. And now you want to call this drama?" She rolled her eyes and muttered, "Oh, come on, it was content. People post this stuff all the time." A slow voice broke in from the back row. "She's telling the truth." Everyone turned. Mr. Carlisle, mid-70s, retired Navy, lived at the end of the block for as long as I could remember, was standing, both hands on his cane. "I've lived here 24 years, he said. "I've watched her mow that front yard when y'all wouldn't lift a finger. I've seen her deliver meals in the rain while her own folks sat dry. You didn't forget her. You erased her." A ripple of murmurs followed. Another voice added, "She organized the school supply drive 3 years running. We all saw her at the drop-offs." A woman in a red scarf leaned forward. "Romy told me she moved out of state, that she didn't want to be part of the neighborhood anymore." Romy paled. My mother stood quietly beside her but wouldn't meet my eyes. I turned to the HOA board. "I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for accountability." Romy tried again. "I didn't mean for this to go this far. It was messy communication, that's all." I didn't flinch. "Then why forge my name? Why redirect donations? Why did every credit go to you, and every failure get pinned to me?" The room held its breath. Mrs. Kittrell tapped her pen against the table. "We're going to call an emergency vote on whether to retract and revise the HOA's annual summary. We can't pretend we didn't hear this." Romy exhaled sharply and slammed her binder shut. "Fine, do what you want." She pushed her chair back and stormed out of the room without another word. Our mother followed, head down, saying nothing. I remained still. Mr. Carlisle nodded toward me, slow and steady. "Some truths don't need shouting," he said. "They just need a mic." The stillness after the HOA meeting followed me home, but it didn't lull me. It clarified everything. 2 days passed, not in peace, but in certainty. On the morning of January 8th, I sat at my desk in the small condo I'd moved into after being edged out of my childhood home. A different kind of silence filled this space, one I'd chosen. No more shouting behind closed doors, no passive-aggressive dinners, no tiptoeing, just my breath. And the cursor blinking on my screen. I picked up my phone and dialed the bank. "Hello, I'd like to make a change to an existing mortgage account." The woman on the other end had a professional warmth. "Certainly. Can I have the property address?" 81 Larkspur Lane. Pause. Typing. "Yes, that's an active file. How can we assist?" I took a steady breath, looking out the window at a sky just starting to gray. "I need to remove myself as financial guarantor. As of today, I will no longer be contributing to payments on that loan." The agent hesitated. "Just to confirm, you're initiating full withdrawal of responsibility?" "Yes, I've already submitted the required documents. My attorney will follow up." "Understood, Miss Blanchet. We'll process that immediately." I hung up, not triumphantly, but cleanly. No second thoughts. By late afternoon, the ripple hit. At exactly 4:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You might want to know. Your family's out front, yelling at the mailbox. Something about foreclosure notices. Janine from across the street." No emojis. Just raw information. Like everyone else, even the neighbors were done sugarcoating. I didn't respond. Then came the calls. 3 missed ones from the house line. 1 from Romy's number. Then a second. Then a third. I didn't answer. Then came the voicemail. It was from my mother. Her voice was lower than usual, strained, almost hushed. But not from remorse, from worry. "I didn't mean for it to get like this, O'Dellin. You know how your father gets when he's pushed. And Romy, well, she never understood you, but we can fix this. I think we still have time. We just need to talk before people start really talking." I stared at the screen for a moment before pressing play again. The same voice. The same tone I'd heard for years, measured, calculated, always one sentence away from shifting blame. I deleted it. No reply, no drama, just silence. I leaned back in my chair, then reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the red folder I'd prepared the night before. Inside, every screenshot, every forged document, every time-stamped transaction tied to the second mortgage. The pieces were organized, labeled, and cross-referenced. As I clicked through the folder on my desktop, a small pop-up appeared in the top corner of my screen. Scheduled email sent 5 p.m. It had gone out on time. Quiet, unstoppable. The recipient list wasn't dramatic, it was deliberate. HOA leadership, school PTA board, local charity directors, a few journalists, 1 legal advisor. Not to embarrass them, not to punish, just to end the lies. And as I watched the confirmation window fade from my screen, I whispered to no one in particular. "I already fixed it." After dropping the envelope in the HOA box, I didn't expect anything. Not really. I wasn't waiting by the window. I didn't check my email. I didn't even tell anyone I'd submitted the documents. But 3 mornings later, it came anyway. Folded inside the latest HOA newsletter between landscaping updates and parking reminders was a full paragraph titled, "Acknowledging the Oversight." They used my full name. Miss O'Dellin Blanchet, a long-standing member of this community, brought to our attention several inaccuracies and unauthorized attributions in recent neighborhood reports. Then, with quiet precision, they laid it out. The misuse of charitable credits, the fraudulent mortgage activity, and the misrepresented meeting minutes. No fanfare, just facts, black and white on recycled paper. That same afternoon, while I was trimming the frozen rosemary bush on the side of my house, someone knocked on the fence gate. I turned to find Mr. Huntley from 2 doors down, holding a thermos and a worn flannel jacket. He smiled. "Just wanted to say thank you. Some of us, we needed that truth to land, even if it took longer than it should have." I didn't say much, just nodded and took the thermos. Cinnamon tea, still warm. The next knock came 2 hours later. Mrs. Draper. Then a teenager I barely recognized who'd once helped carry books in from my car. Nobody stayed long. Nobody made it dramatic. They just said what needed saying. That evening, I let myself breathe a little deeper. The call came at 6:52 p.m. I was lighting a candle at the center of my quiet table when I saw the name flash across the screen. Mom. Part of me almost let it go to voicemail. But another part, the version of me who no longer flinched when standing alone, picked it up. "O'Dellin," she said quickly, like the words had been waiting in her mouth all day. "I just read the newsletter. Why didn't you tell us?" I waited. Not with anger, just patience. She continued, a little sharper this time. "You really want the whole neighborhood thinking we stole from our own daughter?" I looked at the flame, steady and small. "No. I want them to know I finally stopped covering for you." Silence. "You don't understand what it's like for us," she said softly, like that would still work. "I understand exactly what it's like. That's why I stopped." "You're being cruel," she whispered. I shook my head, not that she could see it. "I'm being clear. That's different." Another pause, the kind that begs you to fill it with an apology. I didn't. "I'm not angry," I told her. I'm just done playing the daughter who earns love by financing silence. I hung up before she could respond, and it was quiet in the best kind of way. Later that night, I hosted a small dinner. No formal invites, just a few friends, Eve from work, Marcus, who helped with my refinancing research, and Jean, who once brought soup when I had the flu. The people who'd seen the real cracks and still stayed. No one asked about family. They just passed around bread and refilled each other's glasses. When it was time for dessert, there was no cake. I hadn't planned for one. But Marcus pulled out a single beeswax candle and stuck it in a ramekin of custard anyway. He raised his glass. "To endings," he said, "and to the lives we reclaim after them." I smiled. Amen to that. After everyone left and the last dish had been rinsed, I walked into the hallway and paused by the framed photo that had lived there longer than any furniture. New Year's Eve, 1999. Me, Evan, Romy, Dad, and Mom. Everyone smiling. Everyone pretending we didn't see what was missing between us. I didn't take it down, but I didn't carry it with me either. I left the light on in the hallway just long enough to see the outline of who we'd once pretended to be, then turned it off, walked back into my room and closed the door behind me.